My name is Serena Whitaker. I was 34 years old when my family forgot to book my plane ticket and hotel for my younger sister's Hawaii wedding. That was the sentence they wanted me to repeat. Forgot. Like my name had slipped through a crack in the kitchen floor. Like 16 months of planning had somehow misplaced one adult daughter. Like plane tickets, resort blocks, shuttle schedules, seating charts, welcome bags, rehearsal dinner menus, and matching linen outfits had all been handled with military precision. Except me. The final itinerary arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I remember the time because I was still awake, sitting cross-legged on my couch with my work laptop balanced on one knee, watching a hospital server migration crawl across the screen at 9%. My apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the low rain ticking against the window. Then my phone buzzed. Meredith had sent a PDF to the family group chat. Final Hawaii wedding itinerary. Can't wait to see everyone there. Love you all. I smiled before I opened it. Meredith was my younger sister by 2 years, and for most of my life, she had been the one person in our family who still felt real to me. My parents had their roles assigned before we were old enough to understand them. Brianna, my older sister, was the golden child. Meredith was the delicate one, the bride, the peacemaker, the one everyone wanted to protect. And I was Serena, the difficult one, the intense one, the one who took things wrong. I opened the PDF. Flight details, hotel confirmations, resort map, shuttle schedule, rehearsal dinner dress code, emergency contact numbers, morning after brunch. A neat little pastel-colored document with palm leaves in the corners and Meredith's new monogram at the top. I scrolled once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. My name wasn't there. Not under flights. Not under rooms. Not under airport shuttles. Not even under family arrival times. For a few minutes, I told myself there had to be a second email. Maybe because I'd mentioned extending my stay by 3 days to hike the Nepali Coast Trail, my arrangements had been handled separately. Maybe Meredith had sent this PDF to everyone whose details were finalized first. People do that when they don't want the truth yet. They build a small, reasonable lie and sit inside it for warmth. By Wednesday morning, there was still nothing. So I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, and before I could even ask, I heard laughter behind her. Not television laughter. People. Multiple voices. Glasses clinking. Someone saying, "Don't tell her that yet," before my mother moved somewhere quieter. "Oh, Serena, honey," she said. My stomach went cold. That tone was older than I was. Syrupy, padded, already defending itself. The same tone she used when I was 12, and she forgot to pick me up from swim practice, then told me I should have reminded her better. "Mom," I said, "why am I not on the itinerary?" A pause. Then a sigh, so soft and rehearsed, it made my skin tighten. "Oh, sweetheart, we forgot to book your seat and hotel room, and now everything is booked. I'm so sorry." I looked at the PDF, still glowing on my laptop. "You forgot." "These things happen. This wedding has been planned for 16 months. "I know, honey. You booked cousins from Ohio, Dad's golf friends, people Meredith hasn't seen since college. But you forgot your own daughter?" Her voice sharpened beneath the sugar. "It's not like you were in the wedding party anyway. Maybe you can watch the live stream." The live stream. She said it like she was offering me a kindness. Like I was a distant coworker who couldn't make the trip. Not the sister who had driven 9 hours to sit with Meredith after her first engagement collapsed. Not the person who helped her move apartments 4 times. Not the person who loaned her $3,000 2 years ago when she was between jobs and never asked for it back. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. "Can't you call the resort? Explain there was a mistake?" "Honey, it's peak season in Kauai. Everything's booked solid. Your father already tried." Something in the way she said, "already tried," told me my father had not tried a single thing. I hung up before I said something they could frame later. Then I called Meredith. She picked up, whispering, "Serena?" "Mir, please tell me this is a mistake." There was silence on the line. Too much silence. "I thought Mom and Dad handled your arrangements," she said. They told me everyone was covered. Everyone except me. I didn't know. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. But belief didn't make the room feel less airless. While she kept whispering apologies, I opened Instagram on my laptop. My feed was already full of it. Cousins posting airport outfits, aunts showing off luggage, my father's friends joking about Mai Tais. Then I saw Brianna's post. A photo of her champagne glass in business class. Caption: Kauai bound for my baby sister's big day. Maid of honor privileges hit different. I stared at the words until they blurred. Brianna's going business class? I asked. Meredith exhaled shakily. Mom and Dad said she needed to be comfortable. She's giving a speech. Of course. Brianna had always needed comfort. I had always needed perspective. Then Meredith's phone pinged. Hold on, she whispered. 1 second later, my phone buzzed. She had accidentally forwarded me a screenshot meant for her fiancé, Jordan. It was from a family group chat I had never seen before. The title at the top read, Meredith Wedding, Main Planning. My mother handled the Serena situation, told her everything's booked up. My father, good. Last thing we need is her making a scene in front of Jordan's family. Did she buy it? My mother, hook, line, and sinker. My father, perfect. Now we can actually enjoy the trip without walking on eggshells. Finally, a family vacation without the drama. Should have done this years ago. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, because my brain kept trying to protect me by making the words seem less clear than they were. Serena? Meredith whispered. Are you still there? I forwarded the screenshot back to her. Her gasp was immediate. Oh my God. You need to explain this right now. I can't, she said, voice breaking. I swear to you, I didn't know. They told me you were covered. I believed them. I closed my eyes. That was the worst part. I believed her. Meredith had been careless, maybe naive, but not cruel. The cruelty had come from people who had practiced it so long they could make it sound like logistics. The next morning, I called my father. No good morning, no soft entry. I saw the group chat, I said. I know you deliberately didn't book my ticket or room. A long pause. Then he cleared his throat and slipped into his corporate voice. He ran a regional insurance brokerage and loved talking like every family conversation was a boardroom negotiation. Look, Serena, we thought the wedding would go smoother without you there. My hand tightened around the phone. Without me. Jordan's family has important business connections attending. We can't afford incidents. Incidents? I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. When have I ever caused an incident? The 4th of July 3 years ago. Your cousin's graduation party. Your temper, Serena. The way you get when you feel slighted. At that 4th of July, you spent 45 minutes telling everyone my job was basically babysitting computers. You called my apartment depressing. You brought up my ex-boyfriend in front of strangers. And when I finally told you to stop, suddenly I had a temper. See, he said, this is exactly what I mean. You can't let anything go. And at the graduation party, Brianna took credit for the gift I bought and wrapped. I still have the order history. He sighed, disappointed and satisfied at the same time. Always keeping score, always building a case against everyone. This is why people find you exhausting. I sat very still. Because he was right about one thing. I did keep records. Not because I wanted war, because in my family, reality had a way of disappearing unless I could prove it had happened. You deliberately excluded me from my sister's wedding, I said. We made a practical decision. This is a new low, even for you. You'll get over it, he said. You always do. That sentence landed harder than the lie, because it was the truest thing he had said. I always did get over it, or at least I acted like I did. I swallowed it, folded it neatly, filed it somewhere quiet inside myself, and showed up the next holiday with a pie in my hands like nothing had happened. That night, I opened a blank folder on my desktop. I named it Hawaii. Then I saved the screenshot. The next 48 hours turned me into a travel agent with a panic disorder. I called every airline that flew into Kauai. Every hotel within driving distance. Every Airbnb with a roof and functioning plumbing. I even looked into sleeping in a rental car near the beach, if I could just get there. Nothing. Spring break season had swallowed the island whole. And every dead end made one thing clearer. This had not been an accident. My family had timed it perfectly. Wait until the last minute, pretend surprise, leave no practical solution. I still tried anyway. Because there's a specific kind of humiliation that comes from realizing you are begging for scraps of inclusion from people who already decided you weren't worth the effort. On Friday afternoon, I called the resort directly. A woman named Elena answered with the warm, polished voice of someone trained to sound calm no matter what disaster was unfolding on the other end of the line. "I'm Serena Whitaker," I explained carefully. "Sister of the bride. I think there may have been some kind of reservation issue." I heard typing. A pause. Then softer typing. "I'm so sorry, Miss Whitaker, but we're fully booked for those dates." "I understand. I was just hoping maybe there'd been a cancellation or—" She interrupted gently. "Actually, I can see your sister's wedding block here." My stomach tightened. "How many rooms?" 30. 30. I stared at the rain crawling down my apartment window. 30 rooms reserved 8 months earlier. 30. And somehow, they forgot one daughter. "Thank you," I said quietly. I hung up before my voice cracked. That evening, I tried Meredith one more time. "What if I stay with you?" I asked. "I don't care about comfort. I'll sleep on the floor." There was silence long enough for me to hear her breathing. "I already asked," she admitted. "Jordan's parents said no." "Why?" "They're paying for the honeymoon suite as a wedding gift. They don't want anyone else there." I laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because at some point, your nervous system runs out of normal reactions. "What about Brianna?" I asked. "Dad said she has a suite with a living room." Another silence. Longer this time. "They won't ask her." Of course they wouldn't. Brianna was comfort. I was inconvenience. Then Meredith said the part that really split something open inside me. "Mom and Dad contributed $6,000 toward Brianna's trip." I sat upright. "What?" "They said it was important she be comfortable since she's giving the speech." $6,000. 3 months earlier, my mother had told me they were financially stretched thin and couldn't help with my flight. Now I knew where the money had gone. The final confirmation came Saturday morning. One of my cousins posted a smiling airport selfie from first class. Caption: "Thanks Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda for the amazing upgrade. Best wedding ever already." Behind her in the photo, I recognized the exact resort bracelet package assigned to my family's room block. My room. They had given my room away. I called my mother immediately. This time, she didn't even pretend confusion. "You've always been so sensitive, Serena." There it was. The family anthem. "This isn't about you," she continued. "It's about giving Meredith the perfect wedding without worrying about your moods." My moods. Yes, every family event becomes emotional labor with you. I leaned against my kitchen counter so hard it hurt. "In your mind," I said slowly, "wanting to attend my own sister's wedding makes me selfish." "Oh, stop dramatizing." And suddenly, I understood something horrifying. They genuinely believed this version of reality. Not the lies themselves, maybe, but the structure, the hierarchy, the idea that their comfort naturally mattered more than my dignity. In their world, I was the disruption, simply for reacting to mistreatment. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted me gone so badly, I would disappear so completely they'd never control the narrative again. But first, I watched the wedding. Saturday morning, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and clicked the private live stream link Meredith had texted me with another apology. The screen flickered. Then Hawaii appeared. Blue ocean stretching endlessly behind white chairs arranged in perfect rows. Palm trees bending in the wind. Guests drifting into seats wearing linen suits and pastel dresses like they'd stepped out of a luxury resort advertisement. I recognized everyone. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. My father's golf friends. My mother's book club circle. People who barely remembered Meredith's birthday until there was a free Hawaiian vacation attached to it. All flown there on the family dime. While I sat alone in my apartment 3,000 miles away. Then I saw it. Front row. Near my parents. An empty chair. A white place card rested on the seat. Serena. I stared at it for a long time. The wedding planner adjusted the chair slightly, fussed over it like it mattered, then walked away. My chest tightened. Meredith must have insisted on it. Some small, stubborn part of her still hoping I'd somehow appear. But my parents hadn't fought the gesture, because the empty chair served them, too. It created optics. A tragic little symbol. Look how much we wanted her here. Look how she abandoned us. An empty seat costs nothing. Actual love does. The ceremony started. My father walked Meredith down the aisle, smiling like a politician at a fundraiser. My mother dabbed fake tears with a cream-colored handkerchief. And Meredith... God. She looked beautiful. But as she passed the front row, her eyes flicked toward the empty chair. Her smile faltered for half a second. Then she kept walking. The vows blurred together after that. Not because they weren't meaningful, but because my attention kept snagging on tiny details. The way Brianna stood beside Meredith, glowing with importance. The way my father looked proudest when people were watching him. The way my mother scanned the crowd constantly, monitoring appearances even during her daughter's wedding. By the reception, tagged posts had already started flooding social media. Wish you could have made it, Serena. Family isn't complete without you. Hope you're okay. The fake concern almost impressed me. They were building the story publicly, in real time. Poor Serena. Couldn't handle it. Didn't come. Probably emotional again. Then my cousin Olivia texted me privately. This is disgusting. I know what they did. A few seconds later, videos started arriving. The first showed my father standing during the reception toast. Wine glass raised. Perfect smile. Before I begin, he said warmly, we did save a seat for Serena tonight. Guests made sympathetic noises. He let the silence breathe just long enough. Then he smiled. Probably for the best, though. Big events can be overwhelming for her. A few people laughed politely. Not loud. Just enough. Enough to tell him they'd follow his lead. The second video hit harder. Brianna during her maid of honor speech. You know, she said with a dramatic sigh, I've always believed showing up matters more than words. People nodded. Jordan laughed. And there it was. The implication hanging in the air like smoke. Unlike Serena, I'm reliable. Unlike Serena, I'm stable. Unlike Serena, I deserve love. Then came my mother. Captured accidentally in the background of another cousin's video. She's always been jealous of Meredith, Mom whispered loudly enough for the phone microphone to catch it. You know how Serena gets when attention isn't on her. I paused the video. Replayed it. Paused it again. The thing about betrayal isn't the shock. Not really. It's hearing people discuss a fake version of you so casually that you realize they've rehearsed it for years. By midnight, the reception had turned ugly. Drunk ugly. Cruel ugly. The photo booth crowd got restless, and somebody printed my face onto a cardboard stick from an old Facebook picture. One of my aunts waved it around, laughing. Now Serena's here! People posed with it. Fake arguments. Fake crying. One of Brianna's friends pretended to throw a tantrum while holding my cardboard face. Everybody laughed. Not because it was clever. Because cruelty becomes entertainment once enough people agree on the target. Olivia sent one final message. They're telling everyone you refuse to come because you're mentally unstable again. I tried defending you. Nobody cares. I closed the laptop slowly. The apartment went quiet. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Inside, something colder settled into place. The hurt was still there. But underneath it, now lived clarity. For 34 years, I had kept trying to earn humanity from people who only valued my role in the system. I was the scapegoat. The absorber. The emotional landfill where everyone dumped discomfort so the family could keep pretending it was functional. And suddenly, I was done. Not angry. Not explosive. Done. Monday morning, I called my manager in Denver. The hospital network had been trying to transfer me for almost a year. I'd always refused, because leaving meant abandoning my family. Now that reason was gone. "You still interested?" she asked carefully. "Yes." "How soon can you relocate?" I looked around my apartment, at the framed family photos, at the couch where I'd watched my own humiliation live-streamed in high definition. "At this point," I said quietly, "immediately." 3 weeks later, I was packing my life into cardboard boxes while my family left increasingly frantic voicemails, pretending they had no idea why I'd gone silent. The speed of their emotional transition was honestly impressive. First came irritation, then guilt, then concern, then weaponized concern. My mother texted 2 days after the wedding. "You could at least acknowledge the beautiful ceremony. Meredith is devastated by your silence." No mention of the lies. No mention of the missing ticket. No mention of the reception videos. Just immediate pressure for me to resume my assigned role, absorb humiliation quietly, and restore comfort to the group. I didn't answer. The next morning, my father escalated. "This silent treatment is childish, Serena. You're making Meredith's honeymoon about yourself again." Again. That word sat in my chest like a splinter, as if my existence itself had always been a recurring inconvenience. Then Brianna joined in. Way to create drama over nothing. Classic Serena behavior. I stared at the message while sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor, surrounded by half-packed moving boxes. For the first time in my life, their tactics looked almost mechanical to me. Predictable. Step 1. Hurt me. Step 2. Deny it. Step 3. Accuse me of overreacting. Step 4. Punish me for not recovering fast enough. Once you saw the pattern, it became impossible to unsee. The Denver transfer moved quickly. Too quickly for my family to intercept. HR handled relocation paperwork within days, and suddenly, my life became lists and logistics. Terminate utilities. Forward mail. Transfer medical records. Sell furniture. Change bank accounts. That last one mattered more than I expected. While reviewing my finances, I discovered my mother still technically had access to one of my older checking accounts because she'd co-opened it when I was in college. I hadn't used it in years, but the realization made my stomach twist. How many invisible strings were still attached to me? I closed the account that afternoon. Then I discovered something worse. My phone plan. I'd been paying my portion independently for years, but the master account still belonged to my father, meaning he potentially had access to location history. I sat frozen inside the phone store while the realizations settled over me like ice water. Even when I thought I'd escaped them, there had always been a leash somewhere. Switching carriers turned into a nightmare. The first employee accidentally triggered an authorization alert to the account owner before canceling it halfway through. I drove to a second store across town to finish the transfer. Paranoia? Maybe. But families like mine train you to survive tiny violations long before you recognize them as violations. By the second week, my apartment no longer looked like a home. It looked like evidence someone had already left. Meanwhile, the messages kept coming. My mother started leaving voicemails with tears in her voice. "Sweetheart, we're worried about your mental health." My father threatened a wellness check. Brianna implied I was spiraling again. Again. Interesting word for someone who had never once been hospitalized, arrested, addicted, violent, or unstable. My crime had always been emotional noncompliance. Meredith's messages were different. No manipulation. No blame. Just quiet concern. "Please let me know you're okay." I ignored everyone except her. Finally, after 2 weeks, I sent one text. "I'm okay. Need space. I'll reach out when ready." That was it. No explanation. No defense. No emotional labor. The silence that followed felt almost holy. Then came the knock at my door. 11:03 p.m. I knew it was my mother before I opened it. Some instincts never die. She stood in the hallway, wearing an expensive cream-colored coat despite the summer heat, mascara slightly smudged, like she'd practiced crying in the car mirror. "Serena," she breathed. "Thank God." I stayed behind the door. "How did you get my address?" Her expression flickered. "You're my daughter." Not an answer. I asked how. "Your father still had access to the phone account." There it was. A boundary violation casually admitted because she genuinely believed motherhood entitled her to access. "This has gone far enough," she said softly. "Whatever point you're trying to make." "I'm not making a point." Her face tightened slightly. "I'm making a choice. A choice to punish everyone who loves you because your feelings got hurt?" The words landed so cleanly, I almost admired them. Everything always came back to my feelings. Never their actions. Never the exclusion. Never the humiliation. Only my reaction to it. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman had deliberately removed me from a family wedding, watched people mock me publicly, then driven 3 hours to accuse me of cruelty for withdrawing. "I watched the reception videos," I said quietly. Color drained from her face. "What?" "Olivia sent them to me." For a split second, her expression lost control completely. Shock. Panic. Then, instant recalibration. "Oh, Serena," she sighed. "That was family humor." Family humor. The cardboard cutout. The fake concern. The mental illness jokes. All humor. "You know your father jokes when he's uncomfortable." "Brianna, too?" "Your sister was drinking." Every cruelty had an excuse. Every wound had a justification. Every boundary I set became the real offense. "I'm leaving tonight," I told her. The sentence hit harder than I expected. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean, leaving?" "Exactly what it sounds like." "Where?" I smiled faintly. "No. You can't just disappear. Watch me." Her voice sharpened. "You are not doing this to this family." I almost laughed. The arrogance of that sentence. As though my life fundamentally belonged to them. As though my absence was an act of aggression instead of self-preservation. Then came the line she probably thought would break me. What am I supposed to tell people? There it was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "How do we fix this?" Only optics. Always optics. I felt something inside me finally go still. "Tell them whatever version protects you best," I said. Then I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it shaking. Not because I doubted myself. Because some part of me still wanted a mother. The next 6 hours blurred together. Loading boxes. Cleaning counters. Disconnecting cables. At 4:30 a.m., I took one final walk through the apartment. The place looked hollow. Like a shell someone had already molted out of. At 5:52 a.m., I pulled onto the highway heading toward Denver. Sunrise bled slowly across the horizon. For the first hour, I kept expecting panic to hit me. It never did. Instead, I felt lighter with every mile. Like my nervous system finally understood something my brain had been denying for years. Love was never supposed to feel like surveillance. 4 months later, I barely recognized my own life. Denver changed me faster than therapy ever had. Not because the city was magical. Because distance interrupted the constant emotional static I'd lived inside since childhood. At work, I thrived. Without family chaos draining me, I suddenly had energy, focus, patience. I took over a server migration project nobody else wanted because the infrastructure was ancient and held together by digital duct tape. Finished it in 8 weeks. My boss started mentioning leadership tracks. I joined a hiking group, mostly because I got tired of eating alone. That's where I met Vincent. 36. Physical therapist. Dark hair always falling into his eyes. quiet in a way that felt safe instead of withholding. On our third date, we sat outside a brewery while snow drifted softly across the patio heaters. "So," he said carefully, "what's your family like?" The question usually made my chest tighten. This time, I surprised myself. "Complicated," I admitted. He nodded once. Didn't push. Didn't pry. Didn't immediately suggest forgiveness like people who come from healthy homes always do. That tiny restraint nearly broke my heart. For the first time in my life, I was dating someone who didn't make me feel like I had to defend reality. Meanwhile, my family kept searching. Month 5 brought the fake recruiter email, supposedly from a healthcare staffing agency. The sender's name was Brian Keller, and an anagram of Brianna Keller. My older sister had never been subtle. I deleted it immediately. Month 6 got weirder. An older man started asking questions around my old apartment complex. Except it wasn't a private investigator. It was my father's golf buddy, the same man who'd laughed during the wedding toast. My former neighbor recognized him and texted me immediately. Told him he moved to Portland. LOL. I bought her a $200 gift card the same day. Then came the police wellness check. An officer called me directly one afternoon while I was grocery shopping. "Your mother filed a missing person concern." I closed my eyes. "Officer, I'm fine." "Yes, ma'am." That became obvious pretty quickly. His voice softened slightly. You'd be surprised how often families use wellness checks when adult relatives stop communicating. There was a pause. "Off the record? You don't sound unstable to me." I laughed quietly beside a pyramid of avocados. "No," I said. "Just tired." The most disturbing escalation came 2 weeks later. A formal letter from an attorney representing my parents demanding proof of stability. Employment records. Housing confirmation. Personal references. Like I was applying for parole instead of existing independently at 34 years old. Vincent read the letter over dinner, then slowly lowered it. "Your family is insane." The certainty in his voice startled me. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just factual. I stared at the candle flickering between us. Because when abuse is normalized long enough, hearing someone call it what it is can feel like oxygen. I hired a lawyer friend to respond with one sentence. "My client declines further participation in this matter." After that, things went quiet. Too quiet. Which meant they were planning something bigger. Month 8 began with a heart attack. At least, that's what the email claimed. My cousin Olivia forwarded it to me at 6:14 a.m. with the subject line, "You need to see this." I opened the chain while sitting at my kitchen counter in Denver, still half asleep, Vincent moving quietly around the apartment making coffee behind me. The email came from my mother. "Family. As many of you know, Mark has recently been diagnosed with a serious heart condition brought on by the emotional stress of Serena's disappearance from the family. We are asking everyone to come together during this difficult time and pray for healing and reconciliation." I read it twice. Then, slowly lowered my phone. Vincent slid a mug toward me. "You okay?" "My father is apparently dying because I moved to Colorado." He blinked. "That feels medically unlikely." I laughed despite myself. Then I called Olivia. "What's the real story?" She snorted immediately. "Your dad's fine. I literally saw him golfing on Thursday." "Golfing?" 18 holes. Beer afterward, too. I closed my eyes. Jesus. When I mentioned the email, she continued, he laughed and said, "Sometimes family needs motivation to come together." There it was. The manipulation stripped completely naked. Not concern. Not grief. Strategy. A fake health scare designed to drag me back into the system. "There's more," Olivia said quietly. I already hated the tone. "Your mom's been telling people you disappeared because of substance abuse." The words hit me so hard, I went completely still. What? She's implying rehab without technically saying rehab. Lots of vague mental health crisis language. I stared out the apartment window at fresh snow dusting the Denver rooftops. I don't even take aspirin. I know. But it's working. People feel sorry for them now. Of course they did. Because my parents understood something terrifyingly well. People believe calm storytellers. Especially wealthy, respectable ones. Especially parents. Especially when the child they're discussing has already been labeled emotional. I thanked Olivia and hung up. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the coffee machine click softly in the kitchen. Vincent finally crouched beside my chair. "You don't have to go back," he said gently. The thing was, for the first time in my life, I knew that. That certainty changed everything. A week later, Meredith called. Not texted. Called. The moment I heard her breathing, I knew something was wrong. "Jordan and I separated," she said. I sat upright immediately. "What happened?" A long silence. Then, "Do you remember those screenshots you sent me before the wedding? The group chat?" "Yes." Her voice sounded exhausted, in a way I recognized too well. I couldn't stop thinking about them after Hawaii. At first, I kept telling myself Mom and Dad were just stressed, that they didn't really mean it. But then I started noticing the same patterns everywhere. I leaned back slowly. Jordan's family, I guessed. Exactly. She exhaled shakily. The same roles, the same obsession with appearances, the same thing where one person absorbs blame so everyone else can feel functional. I closed my eyes. Because once you see it, you really can't unsee it. The wedding pressure magnified everything, Meredith continued. His mother monitored my weight before events. Jordan kept telling me not to upset people. Every conflict somehow became my emotional responsibility to manage. I thought about Hawaii. About Meredith glancing at my empty chair while walking down the aisle. About the fear hidden beneath her smile. "I'm not saying we're divorcing," she added quickly. "We're trying counseling. But for the first time in my life, I'm asking what I actually want instead of what keeps everyone comfortable." Pride hit me so suddenly, it almost hurt. Not because she had finally chosen my side. Because she was starting to choose herself. After that call, we began rebuilding something real between us. Slowly. Carefully. No forced forgiveness. No pretending the past hadn't happened. Just honesty. Then, month 10 arrived. And with it, the strangest phone call of my life. "Hello, Serena." The voice was older, sharper than I remembered. I heard what happened. I froze. "Grandma?" My father's mother had essentially disappeared from family life when I was a teenager. Not dead. Just erased. Mentioning her in the family had always created weird silences. "She told me everything," Grandma said calmly. "Your cousin, too." I sat down slowly on the edge of my couch. "I didn't know you even had my number." I asked around. There was amusement in her voice. "I'm harder to get rid of than your father likes to think." I smiled despite myself. Then her tone softened. "You are not the first person this family has done this to." The room went very quiet. She told me everything over the next 2 hours. How my father had been the golden child growing up. How his younger brother, my Uncle David, had been labeled unstable, difficult, selfish. How every family problem somehow became David's fault. How Grandma tried defending him until she herself became inconvenient. "Your grandfather hated disagreement," she explained. "And your father learned early that control keeps you safe in families like ours." What happened to Uncle David? He left. The answer landed heavily. Just disappeared? Married a woman in Oregon and cut contact almost completely. My throat tightened. History repeating itself in real time. "And Mom?" I asked quietly. Grandma laughed without humor. "Your mother came from the exact same kind of family. 2 systems like that together become very efficient." Suddenly, my childhood made horrifying sense. This wasn't random cruelty. It was inheritance. Generational conditioning passed down like heirloom china nobody wanted to admit was cracked. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because nobody told me when I was your age. I swallowed hard. And because, she added softly, you survived it differently than David did. Something in her voice scared me. What do you mean? He drank himself numb. You documented. I looked toward the hallway where my office sat, where folders of screenshots, recordings, timestamps, receipts, and archived messages lived quietly on encrypted drives. Evidence. Not because I planned revenge. Because reality kept getting rewritten around me unless I preserved it. Your father fears documentation, Grandma said. People like him always do. 2 weeks later, Meredith called again. They're planning something. I already knew who they meant. What kind of something? A family healing gathering. I laughed immediately. That sounds fake enough to be dangerous. It's basically an intervention. The words settled heavily between us. My chest tightened. Explain. Meredith lowered her voice. Mom's been telling people you're emotionally unstable. Dad thinks if enough family members confront you together, you'll finally admit you need help. I stood up and started pacing automatically. Of course. Collective pressure. Public correction. A courtroom disguised as concern. What exactly are they planning? I've been listening, Meredith admitted quietly. They assigned people roles. I almost admired the organization. Dad's the reasonable authority figure. Mom's the wounded mother. Brianna's supposed to contrast her reliability against your instability. Various aunts and cousins are prepared to share examples of your behavior over the years.
Examples.
Meaning moments where I reacted after prolonged disrespect. Moments stripped of context until boundaries looked like aggression. They're preparing witnesses, I said softly. Yes. I stopped pacing. What about Grandma? A pause. She wasn't invited. Of course she wasn't. Truth-tellers rarely survive long inside dysfunctional systems. And Uncle David? Not invited either. Because scapegoats who escape are dangerous. They expose the pattern. I moved toward the window slowly. Snow drifted softly through the Denver streetlights outside. What's the goal? I asked. They want you to rejoin the family under conditions. I actually laughed this time. What conditions? Regular check-ins, approved counseling, supervised visits initially. I closed my eyes. Like I was an addict. Or violent. Or mentally incompetent. There's more, Meredith whispered. Go ahead. They want written apologies. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. What? Dad says accountability matters. The absurdity of it almost broke me. The people who deliberately excluded me from a wedding. Humiliated me publicly. Lied about my mental health. Tracked my phone. Attempted legal intimidation. Those people wanted apologies from me. And Brianna, Meredith added carefully, apparently drafted a template. I sat down slowly. Something dangerous settled into place inside me then. Not rage. Precision. Old Serena would have skipped the event entirely. Or shown up emotional enough for them to confirm every story they'd told about me. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I'm going, I said calmly. Meredith inhaled sharply. Are you sure? Yes. They're going to try to ambush you. I know. That's exactly why I'm going. The next 3 weeks became preparation. Not revenge. Preparation. I organized every screenshot, every recording, every financial discrepancy, showing how differently Brianna and I had been treated. Every text message, every social media post, every timeline. Not because I wanted destruction, because I wanted reality preserved somewhere outside their control. Then I started researching something else. My father's business relationships, Brianna's construction contracts, my mother's hospital auxiliary board. Not for blackmail, for leverage. There's a difference. When people spend decades convincing others you're unstable, you learn very quickly that truth without evidence is worthless. The night before the gathering, Olivia called with final updates. They've added another uncle to the plan. For what? In case you get violent. I went completely still. They think I'll get violent. Mom's been laying groundwork for months, saying you're unpredictable. There it was. The final protection layer. If I resisted publicly, they could frame me as dangerous. If I cried, unstable. If I yelled, abusive. If I left, avoidant. The entire structure depended on me reacting emotionally. So, I changed the game. The day of the anniversary gathering, I arrived 45 minutes early. And I didn't come alone. I brought my grandmother. My mother opened the front door and nearly dropped the serving tray in her hands when she saw us standing there. For one beautiful second, every mask slipped at once.
Shock. Panic. Calculation.
Then the performance snapped back into place. "Serena," she breathed, "you're early." Beside me, Grandma smiled pleasantly. "So are we unwelcome?" My mother's face twitched. No, of course not. But her eyes said otherwise. The house smelled like rosemary chicken and expensive candles. Soft jazz drifted through hidden speakers. Everything staged carefully to project warmth and sophistication. The Whitaker family image.
Elegant. Successful. Emotionally healthy.
I stepped inside slowly, while my mother scrambled mentally to rearrange a plan that clearly depended on my dramatic entrance later. Good. Let them improvise. My father appeared from the kitchen, holding a wine glass. His expression mirrored my mother's almost perfectly. "Serena." "Dad?" His eyes flicked immediately to Grandma. "You invited her?" "No," Grandma answered before I could speak. "She invited me." I nearly smiled. The next 20 minutes were chaos disguised as politeness. Relatives arrived one by one and visibly malfunctioned upon seeing me already seated calmly in the living room, drinking sparkling water beside Grandma. Aunt Denise froze halfway through taking off her coat. My cousin Rachel almost swore out loud. Brianna arrived last, walked through the doorway laughing about something on her phone, then stopped dead when she saw me. The color drained from her face. "Oh." That single syllable contained pure disappointment. Because the setup was ruined. They had expected tension.
Mystery.
A late entrance into a hostile room. Instead, I'd become part of the environment before the show started. People couldn't fully perform concern when I'd already spent 20 minutes calmly discussing hiking trails and hospital IT infrastructure with them. Every normal interaction weakened the narrative. By dinner, the atmosphere felt strange and slippery. Conversations stumbled. People kept glancing toward my parents, waiting for direction, waiting for the script. I stayed pleasant, asked about jobs, complimented my cousin's new baby, discussed Denver weather. Every second of composure destabilized them further, because dysfunction depends heavily on emotional choreography. And I wasn't dancing correctly anymore. After dessert, my father finally made his move. He stood slowly and tapped his wine glass. The room quieted immediately. There it was. The boardroom voice. The performance voice. "Now that we're all together," he began warmly, "I think it's time we address why we're really here." My mother lowered her eyes with practiced sadness. Brianna folded her hands like a grieving saint. I almost admired the staging. "Serena," my father continued, "your behavior over the past year has deeply hurt this family." There it was. Not what they did. What my reaction to it caused. "We've all been affected by your choices." He reached beside his chair and lifted several typed pages. My cousin Olivia caught my eye briefly from across the table. Tiny shake of her head. Even she couldn't believe how far they were taking this. "We compiled examples," my father said carefully, "to help you understand patterns others have observed over the years." Then it started. One by one. Rehearsed testimonies, disguised as concern. Aunt Denise brought up Thanksgiving 6 years earlier when I'd stormed out emotionally. No mention that my father had spent 2 hours mocking my career first. Brianna discussed walking on eggshells around Serena's moods. No mention that she'd borrowed money from me repeatedly while publicly calling me irresponsible. My mother cried while describing how hard it was loving someone who pushes everyone away. No mention of Hawaii. Not once. The wedding existed in this conversation only as proof of my instability for being upset. Then came Brianna's big moment. She straightened elegantly in her chair. "I think," she said softly, "that some people confuse accountability with persecution." Jesus Christ. She'd rehearsed that in a mirror. "The rest of us have worked very hard to maintain healthy relationships," she continued. "At some point, Serena has to acknowledge the common denominator in these conflicts is her." Around the table, heads nodded carefully. The social pressure in the room thickened. Agreement creates gravity, and dysfunctional families weaponize consensus better than almost anyone. Through all of it, I stayed quiet.
Calm. Attentive.
No interruptions. No visible anger. And slowly, something fascinating began happening. They started getting uncomfortable because they needed reaction, needed defensiveness, needed visible instability to validate the story unfolding around me. Instead, I simply listened. Finally, my father placed another document onto the table. "We've developed conditions for rebuilding trust." Conditions. The word landed exactly as absurdly as it deserved. He slid the pages toward me. Mandatory counseling with a therapist they approved. Monthly family check-ins. Written apologies. Temporary supervised visits during emotional reintegration. I almost laughed out loud at that one, like I was a rescue dog recovering from aggression. Then I saw the last line. Financial restitution for emotional hardship caused to family members. I looked up slowly. "You're charging me?" My father's expression tightened. "It's symbolic accountability." Across the table, Grandma muttered, "Oh, for God's sake." Silence fell. All eyes turned toward me. The moment had arrived. This was where old Serena was supposed to explode.
Cry. Yell.
Validate everything. Instead, I took a sip of water, set the glass down carefully, then smiled. "Thank you," I said calmly. "I appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts." Confusion flickered across several faces immediately. I reached into my bag slowly. "And now," I continued, "I'd like the same courtesy." My father's jaw tightened. "Serena." I listened without interrupting. Silence. Then I placed a folder on the table. Thick. Organized.
Labeled.
For the first time all evening, real fear entered the room. Not emotional fear. Strategic fear. I started with Hawaii. Printed screenshots of the wedding planning chat. Mom handled the Serena situation.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Finally, a vacation without the drama. I slid copies across the table. Nobody touched them. Then came financial records.
Transfers.
Receipts. Bank screenshots documenting over $40,000 in family assistance given to Brianna over 5 years, while I'd repeatedly been told money was tight. My mother's face lost color first. Then Brianna's. Then I played the reception videos. My father joking about my absence. My mother telling guests I was jealous. The cardboard cutout. The fake concern. The room went dead silent, except for my own voice continuing steadily through it all. "I spent most of my life believing I was fundamentally difficult," I said. Then I started documenting interactions instead of trusting family interpretations of them. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the cousins looked horrified now. Because evidence changes things. Stories can bend. Records don't. Then I did something they absolutely never expected. I brought up family history. Uncle David. Grandma. The scapegoat pattern spanning generations. How disagreement became pathology. How boundaries became selfishness. How emotional reactions to mistreatment became proof of instability. I watched realization spread unevenly across the room. Not everyone accepted it, but enough people recognized pieces of truth inside it that the structure began cracking visibly. My father finally stood abruptly. "This is manipulative." "No," I said calmly. "Manipulation is convincing someone they're unstable for reacting normally to cruelty." His face reddened instantly. "There it is," Brianna snapped suddenly. "This self-righteousness. You always think you're smarter than everyone." "No," I said quietly. "I just finally stopped agreeing to be your villain." That landed harder than anything else all night. Because it was true. Scapegoat systems survive only when the scapegoat participates. Then I delivered the final piece. "I'm not asking for apologies," I said. "I'm not asking anyone to change. I simply wanted the truth documented somewhere. Everyone could see it." I let the silence breathe. "Also," I added softly, "every file referenced tonight exists in multiple secure locations." Real panic flickered through my father's eyes then, because suddenly, consequences became imaginable. Professional consequences. Social consequences.
Visible consequences.
"I'm not threatening anyone," I clarified calmly. "I'm establishing boundaries. If anyone escalates this further, legally, socially, professionally, I will defend myself with evidence." Nobody spoke. Even the air felt stunned. Then Grandma stood slowly beside me. "Well," she said dryly, "that went better than I expected." I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound shocked everyone, including me. I picked up my coat, looked around the table one final time, at my mother's wounded performance collapsing into real fear, at Brianna's fury, at my father sitting pale and speechless, at Meredith quietly crying because she finally understood everything. "Happy anniversary," I said softly. Then I walked out. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was gradual. And somehow, that made it worse. Because once the illusion cracked, people started noticing things they'd ignored for years. Extended relatives talked. Family friends compared stories. The reception videos spread quietly through social circles. My father's insurance clients started hearing whispers. Brianna's municipal contracts received renewed scrutiny. My mother's hospital board learned the troubled daughter in rehab story had been fabricated for sympathy. And the terrifying thing? I didn't have to do anything. That's what finally destroyed them. Not revenge.
Exposure.
I stopped protecting the system. That was enough. 9 months later, my father asked to meet privately. We met at an airport coffee shop.
Neutral territory.
He looked older. Smaller, somehow. "I underestimated you," he admitted eventually. I stirred my coffee quietly. "How?" "The patience," he said. "The organization." I looked at him for a long moment. "Scapegoats get very good at record keeping," I said softly. "Nobody else preserves our reality for us." He rubbed his face tiredly. "Is this what you wanted, watching the family collapse?" I shook my head. The family collapsed because it required one person absorbing damage forever to function. He stared at me silently. "And when I stopped," I continued, "everything underneath became visible." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked the only question that mattered. "What happens now?" I looked out the airport windows at planes lifting into pale winter sky. "Now?" I said quietly. "Now everybody lives with the truth." 6 weeks later, Meredith called me from her new apartment. Jordan and she were officially divorcing. Mom stepped down from the hospital board. Dad was discussing early retirement. Brianna was trying to sell part of her company before losing more contracts. "How do you feel?" I asked. Meredith was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed softly. "Honestly?" I smiled, despite myself. Relieved. Outside my apartment, Denver snow drifted softly through the dark. Inside, Vincent moved around the kitchen, humming under his breath while making dinner. Peace. Real peace. Not the performance version. The earned kind. "The Emperor has no clothes anymore," Meredith said quietly. "And for the first time in my life, Nobody's forcing us to pretend otherwise. I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. For 34 years, my family taught me survival meant silence. Turns out, survival looked a lot more like leaving.